So what we're going to talk about today is linear functions. And a linear function is a function in the form f of x equals mx plus b. And you remember this as the slope-intercept form, which was y equals mx plus b. But instead of y, we're going to use f of x because f of x equals y. So for that reason, we're going to have f of x equals mx plus b. But the same things that were true when we used y equals mx plus b are true about f of x equals mx plus b. And that is that m is the slope, and that 0, b are the coordinates for the y-intercept. Now, notice something here. In the y-intercept, this is the x value, this is the y value. And if we write this in the form f of x equals y, which it does, and put the x and y in there, it looks like this. F of 0 equals b. So if you have the f of 0 value, that happens to be the y-intercept in the future. So let's go to the bottom of the page where we have a comparison of how we learned how to do this before with y and what we're going to do now with f of x. So before we had y equals 2x minus 1. And if we wanted to complete the ordered pair 4 comma blank to form a solution for the equation, we would plug in 4 for x and solve for y. So we would have something like this. Y equals 2 times 4, plug the 4 in, minus 1, which is 8 minus 1, which is 7. And that would complete our ordered pair to be the point 4, 7. We're going to do the same thing, the exact same thing with function notation. So it is the same thing, it just looks different. So if I have a function, f of x equals 2x minus 1, instead I'm going to say find the value for f of 4. We're going to plug 4 in for x and simplify. The 4 goes in for x in 2 places, right here and right here. All right, that 4 goes in both places. So f of 4 equals 2 times 4 minus 1, which is 8 minus 1, which is 7. And then we write our solution like this. F of 4 equals 7. And notice, since f of x equals y, and it does, this is an x value, this is a y value. So this is the same as the point 4, 7. Same thing, just written differently. So let's go to the very bottom of the page, and we're going to find an equation of the linear function f using the given information. So I've got the slope is 4 and the y-intercept is negative 3. And I'm going to start with my function, which is f of x equals mx plus b. And remember, I've been given my m and I'm given my b. All I have to do is plug them in. So f of x equals, m is 4, so 4x. B is negative 3, so minus 3. And this is my linear function. Very, very easy. Just like when we were finding equations of lines and we used y equals mx plus b and we were given m and given b. Very easy. It gets more difficult when we have other information other than the y or the m and the b. Now, example 2 says find an equation of each linear function f using the given information. Remember something I just said. If I had f of 0, that is the y-intercept, because this is the point 0, 5. And this right here is little b. That's my y-intercept. So again, I am given m and b. So start with my function, f of x equals mx plus b. And I'm going to plug in m and I'm going to plug in b. So I have f of x equals 1/2 x plus 5, because b is 5 and m is 1/2. And there is my linear function. So before we were doing linear equations in standard form, now everything is in function form, which is essentially y equals mx plus b, just with an f of x instead of a y. Now, b is different. And it's worked out here for you, so you don't have to write it down. Keep in mind, f of 2 equals 3 is actually, comes from this, f of x equals y. So this is an x value, and this is a y value. So this is the same as saying the point 2, 3. Okay? That's what it means. But we're going to do this a little bit differently because we can, and we're going to do it in function notation. So I'm going to start out with f of x equals mx plus b. Remember, I have the point 2, 3. I do not have b, but I do have m, the slope. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug in -1 in place of m, and since I know this function value, I'm going to plug in f of 2. Remember, when I plug in f of 2, 2 replaces x on both sides. So on this side, 2 goes in place of x, and on this side, 2 goes in place of x. Put my slope here, but I don't know b, so I'm going to leave little b. So I have f of 2 equals -1 times 2 plus b. But what does f of 2 equal? Well, I'm given that information. F of 2 equals 3. So I'm going to replace f of 2 with the value 3. And this is because f of 2 equals 3. All right? That's why I can do that. -1 times 2 is -2 plus b. Add 2 to both sides and I get b is 5. That was my whole goal, was to find b. Now that I have b, I can easily write this function. So we need m and b to write a linear function in the form f of x equals mx plus b. Now we're going to write it f of x equals, put the -1 in for m, put the 5 in for b. So -1x plus 5, which we write it simpler like this. F of x equals -x plus 5. And there's our linear function. So we're doing it a little bit differently. All right, let's try C. We can go through C together. All right, C, we have the slope of 4, and we have f of 2 equals 7. We do not have little b, and we need to find it. So we're going to start with f of x equals mx plus b. All right, we're going to plug in m, and we're going to plug in 2 for x, because remember, this is an x value. So I've got f of 2 equals 4 times 2 plus b. Now what does f of 2 also equal? And I can replace it. It equals 7. So replace f of 2 with 7. And this equals 8 plus b. Subtract 8 from both sides, and I have -1 equals b. That's what I needed. I needed that b. Now I can go back to my function, which is f of x equals mx plus b, and I'm going to plug in m, and I'm going to plug in b. So I have f of x equals 4x minus 1. All right, the next one, I don't have slope, but I do have 2 function values. That's all I need, because remember, we can find an equation for a line if we have 2 points. We're going to use our slope formula to find the slope of this line. Remember something. This is f of x. This is y, because f of x equals y. So this is the point 3, 12. This is the point, 5, negative 2. You can use these and use our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, to find the slope. So I'm going to label these x1 and y1, x2 and y2, and I'm going to plug them in. So I have negative 2 minus 12 in the numerator and 5 minus 3 in the denominator. That gives me negative 14 in the numerator over 2 in the denominator, which is negative 7. And this is my m value. All right? I still need to find b because I don't have b. So we're going to do it the same way we did it on the last example. We're going to start with this. F of x equals mx plus b. And I can use either of my two function values. I'm going to use the first one just because. So I'm going to use f of 3. My slope is negative 7, so I'm going to plug that in. X is 3 plus b. Now what does f of 3 also equal? That's given to us. It equals 12. So I have 12 equals negative 21 plus b. And I'm going to add 21 to both sides. And I've got 33 equals b. That's all I needed. Now I can write my function. Start with a blank slate. F of x equals mx plus b. Plug in negative 7 for m and 33 for b. So I have f of x equals negative 7x plus 33. All right, let's turn the page. Let's do another example just like that. All right? Remember, this is an x, this is a y, this is an x, and this is a y. Let's call this x1 and y1, and x2 and y2. And we're going to use our slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 minus y1 is 4 minus 2. On the bottom, I've got 12 minus 3. This equals 2 in the numerator, and I've got 9 in the denominator. So I have a fraction as my slope. This is fine. We haven't had an example with a fraction yet. All right, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to start with our function f of x equals mx plus b. We're going to choose either one of our points, and I'm going to use this one just because. I'm going to use f of 3. So I have f of 3 equals m, which is 2/9, times 3 plus b. So I've got some fractions to work with, but that's okay. All right, next thing, f of 3 equals 2. So I'm going to replace f of 3 with 2. So 2 equals, now remember, over here, this is really 3 over 1. And I can cancel the 9 and the 3. 3 goes into itself once and into 9 3 times. So what I've got here is 2/3 plus b. Now, your options with this are, you can work this through by adding and subtracting fractions, totally acceptable, or you can get rid of the fractions by multiplying both sides by 3. I suspect most people like to get rid of the fractions, so that's what we'll do. We're going to multiply both sides by 3, which means multiply everything by 3. Here we've got 3 times 2, which is 6. Here, the 3's cancel, and it gives us 2 plus 3b. Now keep in mind, your b also has to get multiplied by 3. Subtract 2 from both sides, and we have 4 equals 3b. Divide both sides by 3, and we have b equals 4/3. Now we can write our function. Just get yourself a clean function to work with. F of x equals mx plus b. All right, now we're going to put in m and b. So we've got f of x equals 2/9 x plus 4/3. So this is your first example that has a fraction in it. And we will save the last problem for a future date.